Welcome to Authentic Space Podcast with Kasha and Co, who live their lives unapologetically.
The other day, I was actually visually picturing the jumping off the edge, right? And how that was kind of an important moment in my life and in my development as a person, but also as a professional. And one thing that came to my mind when I was thinking and picturing that moment was not being afraid of the unknown and just letting go, because it felt like, even if it was complete darkness in front of me, it felt like it was something that was meant for me, and that something good will come out of this, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't something that just I did, like, you know carelessly, and but I just felt like it was the time for me to just jump over the edge and basically kind of take whatever the universe would send towards me to a certain extent. But what I didn't realize at the time is that it was just the beginning.
Beginning of a big journey. Yes.
Yes, and still continuing. And this is just the fact that I jumped over the edge. What I was reflecting upon is like I was jumping over the edge. I jumped over the edge, but it wasn't the jumping that was scary. It wasn't, that was not where my fear was. Or,
Although initially that's what it feels like, right? It just feels like the scariest part is to jump, right?
yes,
That's when everything starts actually happening, right? And it
yeah.
starts kind of showing you a way. And that's kind of where the tricky part is, right? And that's where everything really starts.
And what triggered this thought was I'm reading this novel, this like thriller novel, which is so funny because it's a thriller, right? So it's like a murder
Hmm.
mystery, which is like one of my favorite things to read. I'm obsessed with murder mysteries. um and which also makes me a very dangerous person to be around,
Oh
because
yes.
I know where to hide the bodies. No, I'm kidding. Actually, I'm not, but yes. Anyway, so it was funny because it's such a, just it's a murder mystery. So it's not like
Yeah,
meant to be something that teaches you a life lesson or makes you reflect on specific things. It's not meant to be philosophical or whatever. But
yeah,
one of the characters says, sometimes your passion takes work and you shouldn't give up on it just because it isn't easy. Sometimes, kid, you need to work harder to get to a better place. And the book is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. And anyway, if there are other people that are, murder mystery obsessed like me, but it kind of triggered this memory of the fact that I started being a bit afraid or feeling the pressure, not when I jumped, but when I had to put in the work. Because just realizing that there is something over the edge that is worth jumping towards is not the hard part. The hard part comes after, when you have to basically just uh, get naked and remove everything that you're wearing, your values, your beliefs, your conditioning, your experiences, etc., and just like throw yourself at it and start working and that's where the work, the real work starts. And it kind of made me reflect on the fact that the jump is actually not that hard.
yeah,
What comes after, as you said, is the tricky part, right?
yeah, absolutely. And then when we are referring to jumping off the cliff, I do want to say that it could be anything, right? It could
Mm,
be, quitting your job. It could be moving, relocating. It could be, ending a relationship or a friendship.
yeah.
It could mean graduating from college, right? And then moving on to getting a job or starting a business, right? So it's I think the big cliff is a symbolism for something that we've been maybe used to, maybe comfortable doing, um, but we know that it's either coming to an end or it's just not working, right? So
Yeah.
so we know there's like a path further, that we need to take or we need to go or we want to, try and experience. But it's just, that kind of that scary part that kind of pushes us off of the cliff.
Do we want to call it change?
Yeah,
Change, right?
it's definitely a change. Yeah, absolutely. And then, we feel, I mean, it feels very scary, right? We talked about it
Mm.
last time. We are in that comfort zone of we know how everything works, what needs to be done, what is required from us and expected from us. But then all of a sudden, we have these, again, it's a new chapter, right, of life. So whether it's something that we are choosing ourselves, right, like a shift in career or a shift in
Mm.
jobs, or if it's something that's kind of given to us by life, right? So, such as like ending a chapter of school, of a certain project, for example.
Yeah.
And it feels scary. And we feel like, oh, the moment, if I can only make that shift, right, and transition, everything is going to be fine. And it's actually
Mm.
not the case usually, right? So I do want to say that there is kind of two different types of people, and some people really, make a decision to maybe like make a change or shift, and they decide to go after something that they've always dreamt of, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they've been kind of thinking about something or a journey, a transition that they've been trying to make and want to make for a while, right? And they have a goal kind of laid out in front of them, and they're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Maybe they even have like a plan in place, some sort of a strategy of how they're going to go about it. And then there's people that, they're like, well, I'm going to figure it out, right? Just kind of give it a
Mm.
try different things, maybe experience it and see where it leads me. Um,
Guilty.
yeah, of the second one, right?
Of the second one, yes.
Yeah,
Definitely.
same here. It was what a
uh,
struggle that was. I wouldn't change it for the world, but it's better
oh no.
to be on this struggling journey and challenging journey, as opposed to being just pretty much stuck in something that is not meant for you.
Mm.
It served its time, and there's a lot of lessons from it, but obviously just it's not, it wasn't the future for me.
And I feel that sometimes we also think that there's only one edge to jump from in
Hmm.
life. But in my experience, at least, I've jumped a lot of different edges,
Yeah.
all higher than the previous one for some reason. But
Yeah, life knows that you can handle it. It's I think the first trials are always a little softer on us, um,
very true.
and easier to deal with. But the more you are able to move through and kind of grow on the other side, then your
Mm.
challenges are going to become bigger and higher and more challenging.
Yes. And I think, yeah, it's kind of like I do look at life as a series of moments where you have to go through the uncomfortable jump, really,
Hmm.
to just get to a more comfortable and more authentic spot to a certain extent. And each jump teaches you something new about yourself. And each jump is, I feel it's never final. And I think um, this is very this is a very precious moment, that moment when, as I said, you jump and it kind of clicks in you that change needs to happen, that what I have done until now has served me to get to this point and has served me as a push towards the next jump. So I feel like I am constantly jumping from edge to edge. But I also think that sometimes people believe, that change is scary, but as we said many times, it's absolutely necessary
Yeah.
for us to get to a better place, to develop, to know more about ourselves, and most importantly, a topic that is absolutely very important for me um, is it helps you identify and define much better and in a more finer way all your boundaries and all the things that you are not okay with
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
life.
Also your values, right? So as you learn your boundaries, you kind of know what your threshold is on so many layers, right? With
Yes.
people, with situations, what your values are, what you feel is important in life versus what's not necessarily important to kind of put so much focus on.
Yeah. And I feel that the more you learn about your boundaries, the least you will find yourself in situations where, or you will put yourself in situations where these boundaries are constantly walked over.
Yeah.
Like, I feel that when you learn how to build your boundaries and how to like strengthen them towards or strengthen them within your path and stuff, you will find yourself in situations that are less um acceptable if they go against those boundaries. And I think it's a learning process and you never stop jumping.
Yeah,
I like this.
I
You never stop jumping.
yeah, I do want to say though, well, the jumping part, I do feel that we do live in a constantly changing and evolving world. So,
Mm,
in order for us to become part of the natural flow of this ever evolving planet, we do have to change with
hmm.
it, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of like it's if we want to become part of Mother Earth, then we have to become part of the flow that she's going through, right?
Yeah.
Just like the cycles, the seasons that we talked about, but also the changes, the
Mm,
innovations, the technology evolving, the way people are, our mindsets, cultures changing, blending in, and what have you, right? So it's constantly evolving and changing. And I think change is, if we look at change as an opportunity as opposed to something that's constantly we're
yes.
struggling through or being challenged about, it's just a shift of perspective that kind of makes a whole different view of how we want to tackle it.
Yeah. But I feel that I think that, and I like the idea of the flow, but I also think that it's important to let's say be part of it as well, but as well be careful and not get overtaken by the current. Like it's always a matter of, it's always a balancing act, right?
Yes.
It's always an in between. It's like yes to it but not too much of it, almost. It's just because change can be, and this is something that we a lot of people are afraid of, because change is destabilizing. Change
Yeah.
means you are evolving, and it is absolutely painful because it's uncomfortable,
Hmm.
it's the unknown, and we are conditioned to believe that the unknown is scary,
Yeah.
and that fear is something to be afraid of.
But also, it's something to embrace, right?
Absolutely.
I do want to say though that the fear of change, I think it goes back to our conditioning,
Absolutely.
right? Always,
100%.
always stay, don't move away. That's too far. Don't step out of your box, right?
Mm-mm.
So it is part of that conditioning, and I wonder if we have been kind of brought up in a with the mindset of change is an opportunity, and change is a constant of our life. It is the nature of our kind of evolution. I wonder if people would be less scared to
I
actually make
think
those
so.
changes and take risks and experience new things, right? So I wonder that whether that has like a huge part of that, why we are always scared, right, and living in fear.
I think it's because we are brought up with the idea, at least I'm brought up with the idea, that if you can control things, then you can be efficient and you can live a better life. But this doesn't take into account that life is just unpredictable. So you think you are in
Yeah,
control of things, but actually you are not. You have choices that you can make, but overall, I mean, it's just you cannot control life. You cannot control what happens to you. Um, and so I think this is related to the whole idea of change, because change equals something that we cannot control. So we
yeah.
have that sort of, like, as you call it, conditioning that tells us that change is not good. It's not seen via a, let's say, positive lens. It's more seen as something to just be frowned upon, or just like, oh my God, it's change. I'm scared of it. What's going to happen? Because we are brought up with the idea that if you don't plan, if you don't know what's happening, then you have no control, and so you're going to fail. For me, this is just the conditioning.
It's also that aspect, well, at least for me, my kind of growing up and the cultures that I've been surrounded in, and different countries, because I moved around a lot
Yeah.
too. But even the fact that it's kind of like you do what everyone else does around you.
Yes.
Anytime I made a different decision that was completely contrary to what my cultural environment was doing, it I mean, obviously it was kind of, it went into like, oh, that's wrong, you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
But to me, I always see that they spoke through fear, because I had you know the
Audacity.
courage, the audacity, the courage, the strength to actually move beyond it, to question what's outside of it.
Yeah.
And many people did not. And to them it just felt like you're kind of abandoning the society that you are in, right?
Yeah.
So, and every time I would move elsewhere, and then again I would adapt to a certain environment that I was in, and then I would make another decision where it's just completely
Mm.
outside of the box. So again, it just, that conditioning, it just has such a prevalent component in our kind of structure and in our mindset, that it's just, it's I'm not surprised why it's so hard for so many of us to actually step out of it.
Think of the metaphor that is used, that for someone who feels like it's like as a misfit, or someone that is rebel, whatever.
Yeah,
You always refer it to as someone who goes against the current.
yeah,
So that
absolutely.
is, the current has a direction, and it's so big and it's so strong that when you are going against that direction, there is a very, very big push for you to go forward in the opposite direction. And I think that
Yeah,
that's just where where it all comes from. Why would you put yourself against the current? Why would
because
you,
we're
you know?
Yeah, because where you are seems to be so comfortable, and
Yeah.
it's a safety, it's safety and it's security, right? But that's actually not the
No.
case, maybe ages ago, or years, generations ago, where being part of just one community and one tribal unit, it's what people needed to do to survive, right?
The sense of
But again,
belonging, the sense of belonging to
yes,
something that then
yes.
standardizes everything. This is, again, it's a lack of balance, where you are in a system that does not consider you as an individual with his or her own needs and talents and skills, but as part of a community that needs to be standardized. Why? Because it's easier to control. So
Well, it
it's,
is kind of being part of a system, right? Whether it's a
yeah,
family system, whether it's a governmental system, economic, it's all systems, right? Religious systems. I think that the beauty of it is though that we are stepping into more of an individualistic era, right?
mm,
So now I do want to mention that doesn't matter which way we're going, it
mm,
can really go. You don't want to go to the extreme of it,
that's the
right?
thing. It's the
So
extreme. Yes,
we are,
absolutely.
yes, so having balance in everything that we do, but I do actually appreciate the famous Aquarius era of being more of an individual, because that's where a lot of us, that's where that authenticity aspects of us is really going to become more prevalent, right?
Yes.
We all are hungry and in search of who we are, our true essences outside of our upbringing, outside of our traumas, outside of those fears that we've been kind of constantly living in for so long. So I do love that we are kind of going that direction because people are starting to ask these questions and they're really desiring to change, to make a change and see what's on the other side, try
Yes.
different things. And that's a beautiful way for us to really figure out, find out who we are deep within our souls, because every soul is individual, right?
Yeah.
And I do feel that we can have better communities and better relationships with people that know who they are themselves. Because if I know who I am, I know what my values are, I know what my boundaries are, right? I learn,
Yes.
I start to respect myself, I start to care about myself in a healthy way.
Yes.
Again, we're not going to any extremes.
No.
Then I become better for others, and I
Yeah. Yes. And I think build something that can be constructive. I
and
do.
even maybe stronger, right?
And
With a
yes,
stronger foundation.
for
Yeah.
sure. And it's also having the understanding that, we are, you know, sometimes we put expectations on other people, but we don't take into account that they go through the struggles as we do. And, so understanding that, we as human beings go through struggles and that our behaviors can depend on specific experiences or traumas or things that happen to us or beliefs, etc. And then giving the same sort of understanding to others, it can help in making those connections stronger and definitely more positive. But
Yeah. Also, there's this fact that when us kind of getting to know ourselves, it is a journey, right? It is.
yes,
We always talk about this. It's a process. It's a journey. We need to go through step of various cliffs, right, and keep on growing from one chapter to the next, right? Like in a book, it comes with challenges and lessons, and the more we go through it, the more we experience who we are, and we
yes,
also, as a result, I feel we have more of a understanding, and again that respect of that person went through their stuff too.
yes,
So I remember what I went through. It was so difficult. It was sometimes it was just unbearable, but you know what, I'm so much stronger now, right? Just
yeah,
back to what you were saying about, like, every cliff seems to be higher, right? Every time you
yeah,
move forward, you push forward. But it's like, but when you talk to someone else who's been through their own share of like stepping off the cliff, it's like you can resonate on the same level, that it just kind of, but there's that neutral and mutual respect towards each other's journeys, right? And
This is true.
instead of kind of some sort of, like you said, an expectation. And I also want to say, to back to kind of what you mentioned about boundaries, having boundaries towards the things that just don't support us in that kind of next, or that kind of growth, and that journey forward. I do feel like the more we interact with people that kind of resonate with us and kind of have been through certain things in their
Mm,
life, I
yeah.
feel like these boundaries sometimes they're not always as needed, right? Because
No, no, that's
it's
true.
just, there's just that individualistic respect, right? For me, I respect
Yes,
me, therefore I respect you.
exactly. Yes.
It just feels more natural, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like knowing what your weaknesses are, knowing what your strengths
Yeah.
are, and knowing where you want to meet someone halfway, right? So,
Yes. And that people are no have no less, needs and weaknesses and strength either.
absolutely.
And sometimes this means that we have to go through these uncomfortable situations, as we said, because, I mean, the uncomfortable situation or change, because change is or can be uncomfortable. um it's kind of like a spot where you start questioning everything, and when you start questioning everything, when you start questioning your convictions and the social norms and all these things that are, let's say, as like little seeds put in us since we are kids and stuff. I think that when you start questioning it, and that's where the change starts, but also where the kind of like almost physical state of being uncomfortable starts, but that's where the magic is. That is what will take you
Yeah,
to a hopefully better place. But one thing that we don't understand about this is that change, positive or negative, is still a very painful it's a very painful process, and that opening a new chapter also means closing another one in the back, right? So it's something that we are closing an era, we're closing a moment of our life. Maybe it was happy, maybe it wasn't, and maybe what's coming is better or not. But still, do we give time
yeah.
to ourselves to realize that whenever something starts, positive or negative, that means something else has ended?
Stay tuned for more and join our community at AuthenticSpacePodcast.com and on Instagram at AuthenticSpacePodcast.